What's up, everybody, and welcome back to And Action Filmmaking Podcast. Mikey and I have been away for a little while. We've been busy, we've been doing our thing, but we always come back to talk to our good friends here on And Action. So we're going to get into it today. We're going to talk a little bit about what we've been up to. We want to hear what y'all have been up to. And I promise you that Mike and I did not coordinate these sort of matching aqua blue t-shirts today. This just happens, when you're really good buddies with somebody, you're just connected on a fabric level and shit just happens. So we're excited to be here. Mike, how are you doing, brother? It's good to see you back on the right side of my screen.
Hey, Tommy, we had a nice break. I'm doing pretty well, and good to be back on And Action podcast. And yeah, it's been an interesting couple of weeks for our country. A heat wave, I'm experiencing that here in Florida. I know New England's been hot too, but I've been working on artwork and tweaking my novel, Fight or Play Basketball, and enjoying the summer, buddy. How about yourself?
Well, I have been working on a couple different projects. I actually just wrapped a movie probably just a couple weeks ago. I wrapped a movie called Till Death, which we filmed here in Rhode Island with Hyperborea Films. And my phone is ringing. How rude of me! And yeah, we finished a movie that I'm really excited about. It starred Stacey Dash, uh, Maciela Lucia. It starred Jonathan Stoddard. Just a really cool cast. Anytime you get a chance to make a movie, it's fun, especially when it's kind of in your backyard. We'll probably do a deep dive on this movie eventually, but this one was kind of fun, Mike, because we filmed it at New England Tech, and if anybody knows me, they know that I went to school at New England Tech, so it was really fun to kind of go back to my old film school and make a movie.
Well, Tommy, of those names, I mean, I do remember Stacy was in Clueless, really one of those generational comedies with Alicia Silverstone, and I believe that movie, I want to say, came out in 1993. But Stacy's had a big career, and also we should put a shout out that a movie we both, or at least Dan Hunter directed, I believe. The Mick and the Trick has made its way to Tubi. So people who want to see my acting and Dan Hunter, our friend there, is directing, uh, can check out The Mick and the Trick on Tubi for free, as far as I know.
Yeah, that's a really exciting one, Mike. It's kind of funny, you work on a bunch of projects and sometimes months goes by and sometimes years go by. And this was one of those years went by and sure enough the movie comes out. I got a text from one of the producers, Robert Morlago, and he hit me up and was just like sent me the link and was like, "Hey, check it out, Tommy, the movie's on Tubi." And I'm like, "Whoa, wow, awesome. This is great." So yeah, good friend Dan Hunter directed that one, and I'm proud of him, man. Dan usually makes kind of soft movies. This was pretty hard, and I got to say, I was very impressed with Dan's work. I know that Dan didn't have a ton of money to do this one. He loved working with you, Mike. He told me that, and he thinks that you did a great job. And it's funny, as I was watching it, I remember Dan told me like all these people that we both worked with, like Fred Sullivan's in the movie, you're in the movie, Tom Glenn's in the movie, Nick Principe's in the movie, and it was just so much fun to kind of go back and see all those familiar faces because it's been years.
The movie, from my experience, was filmed in October of 2020. It was pre-vaccine pandemic era, and I actually did a blog on my website, mikemessier.com, that's still up, of my travel, because I think that was the first time I left the state of Florida to really do anything uh, after the pandemic started. And so, driving up through Pennsylvania and going to Philadelphia for the COVID test, and then going to North Reading for the shoot, and then, well, let's save that for another episode, because I think we might have another Mick and the Trick story in us.
Yeah, Mike, there's no question Mick and the Trick is worthy of an entire episode, and we'll get into that. And now that it's out, maybe we can even, hey, who knows, man? Maybe we can do like a Mick and the Trick watch along with everyone. That might be fun to do. We've never done a watch along, and I've always wanted to. And since it's free, I never like to do any kind of watch along that's going to like force somebody to spend money. But since it's free on Tubi, I could kind of just say like, all right, everyone who wants to watch it with us, set your set your play buttons, 3, 2, 1, boom, and we could kind of just watch it together. So that might be a fun thing for us to do down the road. Real quick, I just want to say what's up to Kim Kaling, who's back with us on And Action. Kim, I hope your summer is going great. I hope you're not melting out there. Kim's also living in Rhode Island. And let me tell you something. It's been a little warm lately. Looks like Mike is a little frozen right now. He's frozen in time, but I'm sure he'll jump back in. Um, and as Mike is frozen, I'm gonna actually remove him for a second, and he'll jump back in when he can. Um, so today, I just wanted to, our first episode back in a while was kind of, we had a couple of other topics planned. Um, but then something happened, and as they say, life is unpredictable. And a good friend of mine passed away recently. And not only is he a good friend, hold on a second. I think we're bringing Mike back. Oh no, he'll pop back on. Not only did I lose a good colleague, but I lost a good friend, and in the film industry, lost a really really talented artist, and his name is Doug Sackmann. And today we're gonna pay tribute and honor the memory of Doug. Like I said, just a super talented artist, but more important than that, just a wonderful person that I already miss so much. And it's still all kind of shocking to me that this happened. And I don't know that I'll be able to get all the words out to properly tell people what Doug meant to me, but I'm going to try my best, and we're going to get through it today on the show here. Um, so let me just tell you a little bit about Doug. Doug is a guy who I actually met on the set of The Mick and the Trick, which is the movie that Mike was just talking about. We were just chatting about. It's available now on Tubi. You can check it out. And Larry's getting involved in the conversation, as you can see. And here's the deal with Mick and the Trick. Not to get into it too much, because like Mike said, we are going to do a full blown deep dive episode. But this was a movie that it was kind of everybody was kind of new doing their thing from the production side. It was taking place in Pennsylvania, and I had never made a movie in Pennsylvania. I didn't really know anybody aside from my assistant Robbie Savage and the few actors that were cast in the movie that I knew from Rhode Island. There was nobody that I knew from the production side, and I remember working with my AD, Philip Rush, who I actually talked to today on the phone, which is kind of ironic. But I was talking to Phil. And I remember I just met Phil too, and I'm like, "All right, Phil, so who's doing effects?" And he was kind of like, "I don't know. Like I think the makeup artist is." And the makeup artist, it was, no fault of hers, but she was a traditional, beauty makeup artist. And the script required like heavy duty special effects, like squibs, and people were getting shot in the movie. Legit practical, traditional, old school special effects. And Phil said, "Well, listen, I got this guy, Doug Sackmann, who would probably come in and do the squib work. He's, really talented, and he's a friend. This isn't a huge budget, but he's a pal, so I think he'll come in and do it." So that being said, he gets on the phone with Phil. Phil gets on the phone with Doug, and within about, I want to say, 48 hours, Doug Sackmann has arrived to Pennsylvania. I think he was based out of New York at the time. And Doug made the trip, and he came to set. And I just remember, I think he worked only a day or two on that show. But I remember him coming in, and just the second I looked at him, my initial knee jerk reaction was like, if you looked up special effects artist in the dictionary, his photograph would be there, right down to, he's kind of a big guy, got long hair, tattoos everywhere, and they're not just any kind of tattoos. Like a lot of them have this really cool, like kind of pop culture theme, horror theme. A lot of old school kind of nods to the things that he loved. Obviously a lot of special effects artists, usually they're massive horror movie fans. It's kind of like, it comes from like being a little kid and wondering how these effects happen and how can I do that? How can I make that happen? And usually they're borderline obsessed with these kind of movies. So Doug was definitely one of those guys, and I could kind of tell right away. And he came on, and I just remember the attitude was just phenomenal right off the bat. He was just kinda like, "Alright, what do you need me to do?" And I was like, "Well, these 3 guys are getting shot. This guy's gonna get shot in the head. This dude's gonna take a couple in the chest, and then this guy I really want to get, like, shot up all over the body." And he's like, "Okay, well, I can do a headshot on him, no problem. We'll just hide the tube off camera. I'll be laying down on the floor, so you just frame me out. The guy with the is 3 shots enough? You think boom, 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 center mass?" And it was just really great. Like, I just felt like, the night prior, I was literally saying to myself, "How am I gonna do this? Like, this isn't gonna work without a special effects artist." And here we are a day later. What a difference a day makes. Doug Sackmann's on set making me feel really calm and comfortable that, like, "We got this shit under control. Don't you worry about a thing. I'm gonna do this up." And I could tell just by talking to him for 5 minutes that he was a pro, and he had, this wasn't his first rodeo by any means. So the shoot went really great. The squibbing was a blast. And if you go and watch the Mick and the Trick, you can see those scenes and you can see Doug's handiwork on that one. It looks like Mike is rustling. I see a rustling from Mikey. There he is.
Hey, Tommy. Sorry about that, buddy. Had a little. There's some gentlemen doing some work in the neighborhood, and apparently the Wi-Fi got knocked out. So I'm
Well,
on my phone now. But in a
well,
few.
welcome back. We,
Thanks,
we're,
buddy.
gl- we're glad that you're back. We were just catching up on letting everybody know what's up with basically my origin story of Doug, when Doug kind of saved the day on the set of The Mick and the Trick. I had mentioned how, there's not a lot of, wasn't a lot of forethought into the special effects and how that was going to happen. And Phil gave Doug a call, Phil Rush, our first AD, and then sure enough, Doug showed up. And after talking to him for 5 minutes, I felt like it's almost like if you're really sick and you go to the hospital and a doctor just tells you, like, "Okay, listen, we're going to put you on antibiotics. We're going to get this looked at. This will be done. You'll be cleared up in a couple days, no problem." And you just feel good. You're like, "Okay, I can not worry about that anymore." Right. So that's kind of how Doug was on the set. But then I remember Phil telling me something that, he's like, "Hey, and listen, Doug likes to party. He likes to have a fun time. Like, we're gonna have some fun tonight." And this was one of those movies where it's kind of funny. Some movies you shoot your 12 hours, you wrap out, and you go home and you kind of like just chill out, you go to bed. Not a lot of people hang out with each other. It's not really like you know, not a lot of fellowship on set. And then other movies, typically when you're like living on location, sometimes there can be a lot of hanging out that happens after set. There could be a lot of fun times. Sometimes that can lead to, drinking, having a couple of puffs of something, some mind altering substances. And in this particular situation, we were all living in this old, like, it was actually an old retirement community that had been kind of abandoned, and it was just like an empty building. But at one time it was this beautiful kind of, you know, uh, kind of like an inn, and then the inn get converted into an old folks home basically, and that's the state it was in. But it was a really cool building, most likely haunted, and yeah, Doug showed up that night, and every night we had a fire pit and we were hanging out outside. And it was, I think this was in like late October or, but like for some reason we were having one of those summers where like the summer just, the fall forgot, the summer forgot that fall was supposed to happen.
Right.
And it was kind of a warm kind of October. And I remember every night you'd be good to go if you had like a little light jacket, little hoodie, you'd be good to go outside hanging by the fire. And we would have a few drinks and we would, kind of do our thing. And Doug was a part of that night. I remember Doug having a couple beers with us and a couple puffs or whatever. And I remember just vibing with him and talking movies and laughing and having such a good time that, I'm sure we can all relate to this. But it's one of those things where I didn't know Doug for more than a few hours, but I felt like I've known him for like a few years, like we just kind of connected on that kind of a level. We liked all the same movies, we liked all the same kind of things. I remember him just what kind of drew me in immediately was I was like, he worked on Unsolved Mysteries, and like Unsolved Mysteries was one of my favorite shows, coming up. So it was just kind of fun to work with him that night. And then about a good 6 months later, I'd say, we're back on set together making Johnny and Clyde. Mike, this is weird. There's actually 3 of you right now. This is so bizarre. Look, it's triple Mike. Oh man, we almost had a Mike trio on the line. All right, so a few months later, I'm about to make a movie called Johnny and Clyde, and this movie is loaded with special effects. Everything from an actual demon that we had to build, this big demon monster, to headshots, to explosions. I mean, if you can think of a way for a person to die, they probably died in that way on the set of Johnny and Clyde. Well, I should say in the movie. We didn't actually kill people. Nobody actually died on this one. Um, Real quick, let me check in. Scott, what's up, brother? It's good to see you again, too, my friend. We're back. We're back and
Hey,
better than
Scott.
ever. So yeah, so Johnny and Clyde, which if you haven't seen, you can check out right now. I think that one's available on Tubi. Pretty sure you can watch Johnny and Clyde right now if you want to check out some of Doug's handiwork in that one. But this one was a movie that Doug really could kind of wrap his arms around because unlike Mick and the Trick, where he was just coming in to save the day at the last minute, we had some time to prep this one, and I got to really kind of get inside his mind and see how he works as an artist and as a businessman. I mean, that's the cool thing about Doug. Doug also, like, he ran his own special effects company, and he was very smart about getting with you and being like, look, man, you're going to spend a lot of money on this, this, and this. You don't need to spend that much money on this. I'm trying to save you money on this. Like if he had old materials, like if you were working within a budget, he wasn't opposed to like, well, I used this for an old show that we didn't, we had a few extras. We didn't end up using them. So I'll donate those to the show. He was just like really caring. And the reality is, not everyone's that nice. Like not everybody gives a shit enough to, maybe take a couple bucks out of their own pocket to make sure that your movie, your dream, your vision is going to look better and kind of be the way that you want it to be. So he was a real, like an artist. There are two types of production people, and I'm not going to, this isn't my place to say which one I like or don't like, but there are the production people that are very much like, they're almost like assassins. They're like hitmen. They come to the show. They're like,
Right.
look, this is my rate. This is my kit fee. If you want an extra 9-volt battery out of my kit, I'm going to fucking whack you for it. You're going to pay for that 9-volt battery. And it is what it is. Look, I can't argue that. That's business. But then there are these other guys who just, they want you to be successful so bad, and they also have pride in the work that they do, where like, well, they know if their name's on it, they want it to look the best it can, that they're real team players and they're willing to like just go deep for you and you know work with other departments and be there's always not to give you a whole breakdown on the structure of how a film is made, but there's always multiple departments, and in each department sometimes they have to work together with each other. The hair and makeup team will sometimes have to work with special effects because maybe they're rigging uh, a tube that comes out of the hair so that someone's brains won't blow out or whatever. And
Right.
Doug was just really good at like partnering up and communicating with other departments. And it was never like a battle because sometimes it can get a little chippy, can get a little catty between departments. And Doug just really played really well with all different people.
Yeah, Tommy, I'll jump in on that, because I didn't know Doug nearly as well as you did. In fact, I think our paths were on the same projects, but at different times type of thing. But what you said about Doug really rang true in that it seems like he was the type of film person who was seeing what they could bring to the production, not necessarily just what the production could bring to his wallet. It seemed like he was looking to see what he could do to service you and the other crew members, and that's really something to say because that shows the integrity and the love of filmmaking that he had.
Yeah, he just wanted everybody to win. If he was one of those guys where like if he was on your team, like you knew that you could count on him to kind of go above and beyond. And those kind of phrases get thrown around a lot. They really do. And but I really mean it when I say that about him. There were a lot of moments on Johnny and Clyde where as a filmmaker, I just wasn't sure how certain things were going to happen. Like I didn't know how this was going to work. And Doug just knew how to take a script and translate the words on the page to actual Larry, you got to get out of here, brother. Actual, like, well, this is how we're going to physically make that happen. He was almost like a scientist, man. Like, almost like, I'm going to take it a step further. Doug was really like a magician. Doug in a different
Right.
world, in a different life, Doug probably could have been a magician and had various tricks that he could do and things that he could build because he was such a competent builder, a designer, just a technician. Like there was very little that he couldn't do. He was such a jack of all trades and a master of many too. And I remember specifically on the set of Johnny and Clyde, there was a seance that takes place where an evil demonic spirit must be drawn outside of this ancient stone that is discovered that's, possessed. And I remember in the script writing like, well, I want it to like smoke up and look like it's like kind of about to catch fire. And then I want the smoke to billow up, flame up, see a big flame, and then I want the smoke to go up into the sky. And in the sky, that smoke will turn into the demon, which we called Bakwas. That was the name of the demon. And I remember writing that scene and being like, I don't know how the fuck we're gonna pull this off. Like I was guessing CGI, and we all know
Right.
that, like, yeah, CGI can look good, but it's very expensive, and for you to make it look good, or I should say, if you don't have the right budget to make it look really great, it can end up looking horrible. And there's nothing worse than you're watching a movie and you're just like, oh god, that looks so fucking fake.
It
Um,
takes you right out of it. It takes the audience right out of it. And it's kind of like a pass fail, isn't it, Tommy, at this point? We're like, because CGI in bigger films and productions has evolved so much that if you don't have those super resources, if you're trying to do CGI at this point, the audience will not tolerate anything that doesn't look really, really good.
yeah, because the reality is we're in a world now where like there are filters on our phones for like Instagram that can do crazy shit. Like I can put an alien behind me and take a picture with them, or I can make it look like my house just exploded with like an app, or just like literally not even an app, like literally a filter. So people are takes an awful lot to impress them, and sometimes with practical effects just look better because they're real. And I remember with this particular like demonic seance bit, Doug was literally like off camera. He had some kind of like smoke machine, and he was literally off camera with what I could only describe as like a tube and like almost like a blowgun. And that tube was fed underneath this like big steel plate. And as the scene would kind of go on and the chanting would go up, Doug was just like laying down on the floor off camera, like slowly blowing smoke through this tube. And it was just like it was perfect. It was amazing. He was like a reverse snake charming because you're like getting the smoke to like rise up. And then somehow he had this system where he basically had like what I can only describe as sort of like flash paper, like a type of substance that when you touch it with a match or a lighter, it flames up,
Yes.
but it's done in such a way that it's safe. Like, you
Right.
can't look, I'm sure you can get messed up if you do it wrong. You probably burn your eyelashes off, but you're not going to like set a house on fire with flash paper. The idea is it lights up, makes a big flash, hence the name, and then dissipates. It's done. So as soon as the smoke rose, boom, he hit the flash paper, and you could actually see like the ring of fire in in the character's eyeglasses, and it was just phenomenal. It's one of my favorite, shots in the movie. And it was all Doug. Doug designed it. Like he wasn't able to just like think it up in his head after reading it. He was able to go ahead and like get all the implements together and figure out how it could be shot. And he was really cool about being like, "Hey man, this is the best angle here. Like you want to put the camera right here. This will hide all the, the strings, the seams or whatever you want to call it." So Johnny and Clyde was just a blast. And then I'll never forget like the again, back to Doug's kind of personality and his nature. We had a rap party the night we wrapped, and that night we just partied really hard and had so much fun. And Doug kind of brought the party. Like Doug was the party. Doug brought a karaoke machine and was just singing and having a grand old time and like really like kind of just entertaining everybody. Like Doug loved to just entertain whoever he was around. And we just had so much fun that night. And this was a weird movie because we shot for like a few days and then we took like a 2-week break and then we came back and shot for like 3 weeks. And Mike, you were in the movie. Were you in the first part or the second part?
Tommy, I believe I was on I want to say like the first day of shooting. Like we're talking about 2021, April. This was in October of 2021, I believe, right?
I think you were in the first day of the second part of shooting or something like
That's
that.
right. That's what it was. That's what it was. So
Yeah.
this is why when Doug passed away, I asked you if I had worked with him, and you thought that he had just left and I had just come in was one of the things. So I
Yeah, I
think
think
that's
he
what it
was
was.
there, but in your scene, you didn't require any crazy special effects either. So like there's a good chance he was so busy on that movie. There was a good chance that he might have been like literally building something else like while that scene was taking place because he might not have been needed. But one more thing on Johnny and Clyde. There's actually two more things on Johnny and Clyde that I got to mention.
Sure.
And one, I kind of jumped the gun because I'm just trying to get it all in the hour that we have. But one of my favorite memories from Johnny and Clyde was, Doug hit me up and he said, "Hey, I'm pulling up any minute. Like I'll be down there." He's like, "But listen, bro, I got a bus." I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" I go, "I have a school bus. Like, is there going to be room for me to park down there?" And I'm like, "Wait, you have a school bus?" He's like, "Yeah, man. Like, wait till you see it. It's called the Death Bus." And I'm like, "What?" And he pulls up, and I'll never forget. And somewhere I got a video of this, but he's blasting the Love Shack by the B-52s, right? Which is just like a classic, like
Yeah.
fun, loving fucking song. Like the Love
Right.
Shack is blasting. We're in downtown
Cosmic
Providence,
thing. Yeah.
right? Yeah, it's very like there's a mood. I felt like this was a scene in a movie. I look down the street, busy downtown Providence, and I see a flat black yellow school bus. Picture a yellow school bus, but painted all black by Doug, custom paint job, blasting the Love Shack, and it pulls up, and he's like out the window, like
Pumping
pumping
his
his fist
fists.
as he pulls up, dancing to the Love Shack, singing the lyrics, pulls in right in front of the building, and I'm just like, "There's my guy." You know what I mean? I just felt like, okay, we're in good hands. Doug's here now. And let me tell you a little bit about the Death Bus. It was almost like I almost wish like I could make like if I was a kid, I'd want like a toy, like an action figure vehicle of like the Death Bus. Maybe that's something that we could work on as a tribute to Doug. But the Death Bus was basically he took a school bus, your standard size school yellow bus. He ripped out all the passenger seats and he had built a mobile production workshop slash basically like an RV. So there were like a couple bunks, 2 or 3 bunks that could sleep people. There was a sink, he had like all the amenities that you'd need. I'm pretty sure, fridge, everything else, all, anything you'd need like a camper. But then he also had his workshop, workbench, tools, all of his effects stuff that he needed. Probably like, there'd probably be it's kind of funny because there were a couple seats and in the seats you'd see like a corpse dummy, like a couple dummies that you like for the shoot. He would put them in the seats. Uh, and it was, it had party lights and everything. It was just such a cool looking thing, for lack of a better word. And it was just so Doug. You know what I mean? Like to have that death bus was just so Doug. It was such a Doug thing to have.
Did he? I have to ask. Do you think that he occasionally or often crashed in a death bus? Did he have like a little?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, no, like people, yeah, you'd stay in the bus for sure. I mean, like that was his thing. Obviously, when he was on a show, like he'd have a hotel, like to stay in, but we'd get him a room. But like on remote shoots, like or overnights, I'm sure he was catching a couple Z's in the desk. But the reality is, Doug worked his ass off, so he wasn't the kind of guy who'd be like napping when you need him. But the death bus was so cool, and I'll never forget the B-52's Love Shack just blasting out of it, pulling up. I got to find that video somewhere.
It sounds like the death bus was like, as where the kids say, with Riz, the charisma. The
Death
bus
was
had Riz.
it had a lot of riz, and really, it's just like where the cool kids hung out. You know, like it wouldn't be uncommon to just sneak by the death bus, and like for example, like like I'm not saying I did this, but if you were to say maybe you had a joint on you and you wanted to go smoke it somewhere where you knew that you'd be safe and not judged, maybe you could go behind the death bus and hide. And if Doug saw you back there, he wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't think anything of it. It's just like it was a safe place, Mikey. It was a safe place for us kind of outcast kids.
Yeah, he definitely sounds like the kid in high school that was like the cool guy to know. Like, he sounds like the type that would have all the ins and outs of how to. I'm thinking of the Breakfast Club with the character in all black. Like the cool
Jonathan
house.
Bender.
Yeah, that sounds like he
Yeah, the
knew
only
all the.
difference is, yeah, he definitely had that like cool kid vibe, and a little bit of the, as they say, like cool kid in the back of the bus, maybe causing a little trouble, but all harmless fun. Just a great sense of humor, handsome guy, had great blue eyes. You know what I mean? He had the riz. Doug, it was just loaded with riz. And he also, one more thing, and I won't spend too much time on this, but again, the demon in Johnny and Clyde, Bakwas, he created that costume. Nick Principe ended up wearing it. I gotta give a shout out to his two assistants, Jade and Ruby, who worked side by side with him so many times. And they were a part of his family. They were members of the Death Bus Society, and they were right by his side on so many projects. And they created this amazing creature, demon creature, really just out of items that if you were to see it, you'd be like, I remember seeing all the items laid out on the table. And I remember seeing like one of the early masks that they worked with and just saying to myself, like, how's this going to come together? Like, this doesn't look that cool. No offense to anyone here. I wouldn't say that to them, but in my mind. And then almost like when you watch like Bob Ross like make a painting, and at first you
Yeah.
just see like a bunch of colors on the canvas and a bunch of splotches, and you're like, what the fuck is this? What's happening? And then all of a sudden you see that first line that a tree gets formed, and then you see the branches come on, and then you see, the little lines in the stream, and suddenly the water comes to life. So like I got to watch Doug basically do his version of the Bob Ross, but with special effects and creating this demon. And it was just really awesome to see, and such a talented guy, Mike. And the fun thing is, like, pretty shortly after that, I want to say we wrapped that movie in,
October of
October
2021.
of 2021. And then, yeah, well, I guess it wasn't that shortly thereafter, but 1 year later, I'm working with Doug again on the set of The Collective, which, again, The Collective was a movie starring uh, Don Johnson, Tyrese Gibson, Ruby Rose. And it's just a really kind of action-packed spy movie, and it had a ton of violence. It had a ton of it's kind of a pretty gory action for like an action spy movie. It had quite a bit of blood and guts, and I knew that wow, Doug's a guy that we got to kind of bring onto this project. So Richard Switzer produced that one, and we brought Doug on, and again, same thing like we just talked about. Doug kind of just brought everything he had to that project. I remember there was a scene where we had to build these skewers that end up like stabbing through a guy's arm, and then he uses them to flip. And I remember just like him being so excited to kind of design that, and getting to watch him work with again, so good at working with others and working with the stunt performers to show them like, all right, grab here, because if you grab here, it'll break. But if you hold it here, you'll be good. And just like, again, just so thorough at everything he did. And if you watch the special effects in that movie, I mean, every gunshot, every stab, a lot of practical old school effects. And, it was just really cool. I mean, on that movie, there was a scene where a guy had to go through like a glass window, like actually bust down a glass door. And this is a situation where, again, like he so doesn't have to do this, but he called we couldn't really afford it in the budget to do it traditionally the way we really needed to do it. So he called his friend who was a carpenter from Philadelphia. And keep in mind, we're in, outside of Boston shooting this movie. He got his buddy from Philadelphia, who's a general contractor, to make the trip up, to Rhode Island and basically build a bunch of false doors and glass windows and fabricate everything for us so that we could make it safe so that you can actually have an actor like smash through the window and not cut themselves. And this guy worked his ass off for 2 days. You know, obviously we paid him, but it wasn't the rate that I'm sure a guy like that's used to getting paid. But he did it because Doug's a friend and he wanted to be there for Doug. I never met the guy. Richard, our producer, never met the guy. But again, that's the kind of guy Doug was. He could get people to help him out because he was such a good person. And but and by doing that, he was helping me out. So it was really just this big circle of like love for making films and wanting to make the best movie and using every asset that you have. And I'm telling you, man, like it sounds crazy, but that's such a rare trait. Most people, especially like people that are kind of seasoned, like Doug was, most people, the longer they do it, the more they're like, yeah, I'm gonna let you guys figure this one out. Sure, I could help, but I don't really want to because that we all know, man. Like, how many times have we been there? We're like, all right, I'm gonna go help out. I'm gonna use one of my contacts to make this happen, and then it becomes a big pain in the ass for you. You know, it's like no good deed ever
Right.
goes unpunished. Doug didn't care. You know, if it meant that the project was going to be better, he was going to help us out.
He wasn't
And
cynical and jaded. He didn't get to the point where, he lost his enthusiasm or he lost his smile for the business of filmmaking or the art of it.
no,
He
not at
was
all.
still all in.
Yeah, he was, and I'll
And
never
Tommy
forget.
had,
Again, the death bus showed up on that movie, and I remember like I remember it being kind of like an early morning. I think it was like a 4:30 call time, and he didn't show up until probably like 7 or 8 a.m. But like I was a little dragging, I was a little tired, and I remember just like this beautiful fall day. The death bus always made an entrance. I remember just this beautiful fall day, and it was a quiet drive, kind of a secluded road, leaves everywhere, autumn foliage, and boom, there comes the death bus cranking some fucking song, leaves flying everywhere. He pulls in, and you just felt better. Once Doug showed up, you felt better, and that's kind of what it came down to. And the last thing I'll say about the collective, there's two more little notes on that. Is there was one moment in the story where our main character only has two bullets left. He has one bullet left, and he's got to kill two bad guys. So he does this kind of like 2-for-1 deal, where it's called the pistol puppet. And basically, our main character comes out, grabs a guy, sticks the pistol in the dude's mouth, turns his head, fires, aiming at the other guy. Basically, the bullet goes through one guy's head and into his pal's head there, killing two birds with one stone. Pistol puppet. And I
right.
remember taking that to Doug and being like, Doug, how the fuck did we pull this off? Like the timing has to be perfect so that when he grabs him and turns, we need two squibs firing off at the same time. And it's got to actually be almost a little delayed. So it's like bing, like 1, 2, but not 1, 2, because it's a bullet. It's traveling incredibly fast. But like I need this one to go off, and then like right on its heels, the other one has to go off. And Doug, of course, rigged this very unique tubing piece that kind of connected at the bottom and could be hidden off camera. And he had two remote triggers so that he was literally like waiting and watching. And the timing on Doug's part was just so perfect to like see the gun enter the first guy's mouth, hit the button on the one trigger, and then boom. And then just like the timing was perfect. And it just bam, bam, two squibs back to back. And it just looked awesome. And I remember just thinking, like, there he goes again, like saving the day, pulling off something that, yeah, I easily could have like done that in two cuts. I could have showed one guy's head blown off, then cut to the other guy's head blown off, and implied that they both got shot. But seeing both guys get hit in the same frame, that really hit home like what I was trying to do visually as a storyteller. So Doug just made everything better. There's no other way to say it.
Yeah, the word practical is used to describe the effects that are done in front of the camera and with squibs and all the great stuff that people have used for decades in filmmaking. And I did want to mention, Tommy, that the Doug SAKMANN, he passed away on June 27th of this year, 2024. And interestingly enough, I don't know if you knew this, Tommy, but his birthday, according to IMDb, is actually coming up. It's July 22nd. is Doug's birthday. So he was born in 1980. So somebody can help me do the quick math and how old Doug would have been.
I
But I
think
mean,
Doug would have been 44 years old.
yeah. And I just you did mention to me that at times Doug was kind of a wild man. He did win a couple of awards, and maybe just to give this a quick shout out, just
Yeah,
two that
please
are
do.
listed. The Chicago Horror Film Festival. So Doug must have been really young for this, because in 2013 he was a nominee for the jury award for best makeup effects for The Cemetery. And get this, and like I said, he kind of the wild man might come into this one. 2014 nominee, best director parody division. His movie was titled Evil Head, and for those that know, you know, it was an AVN award. Adult, I think it's adult video news or
Yeah,
adult video.
Doug worked in the adult film business for a while. Doug worked for
Yeah,
Troma for a while, making, low budget kind of horror movies, or I shouldn't say low budget, but just like, Troma is a thing, man. People love Troma.
yeah.
So yeah, Doug had a, Doug let his freak flag fly. He was a cool guy in that sense. He was so professional and never let anyone judge him, yet, wasn't opposed to, getting into some maybe provocative fields that traditionalists might be raising an eyebrow to. Doug did what he did what he loved to do.
There's if people are watching our episode and didn't know Doug in person, if you get over to IMDb and see some of these photographs, Tommy, they're really great, because there's one of Doug that I'm looking at right now, and he's wearing like these blue kind of parachute pants almost. He's got a bucket, a blue bucket, and he's holding like red blood and guts, not real, but they look pretty real. And he's got this crazy smile, and he looks like Bart Simpson come to life. Like, he looks like if you took the best qualities of Dennis the Menace and Bart Simpson and Home Alone. That's the facial
Yeah,
thing?
totally.
Right.
Like
So,
just
and he's got,
just a mischievous kid is what you're saying. Just like a
yeah,
fun-loving mischievous kid. Yeah.
and he looks like maybe he's 22. He could be as young as 18 in this photograph. It's hard to tell. I don't know if maybe this was even on one of your sets, but he's just got this crazy enthusiasm, and the spiky blonde hair. It feels very kind of early 90s. There's another picture. This must have been Trauma, because he's got the Toxic Avenger and what looks like the guy from the Saw movies, like the puppet creature of some kind. But and Doug is now, he's crossing his arms, and he's got like a black and white, almost bowling guy shirt on, and he's got blue hair. So he's gone from the spikes blonde to the blue hair in that one.
Yeah.
There's another one where his hair, it looks like a tinge of green, and it looks like he's in, I would guess, Santa Monica or California, because there's some palm trees in the background.
Yeah,
And
Doug had
he's kind of like
when I knew Doug kind of had like the Buffalo Bill inspired hair from Silence of the Lambs. That was kind of like I remember making that joke to him, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, man, Doug just he had a lot of cool looks, and he wasn't afraid to have fun. I'm not going to do it any justice, but I know that one of the things that Doug was really into was he would have these zombie flash mobs he would be part of, where he'd outfit a bunch of zombies in zombie makeup, and then they would show up and do a big dance, and it'd shock a bunch of people. But just like a lot of fun. Like I think that if you ask all of Doug's friends, and it was really moving to see like such an outpour of support from so many different filmmakers. Like one thing that was common throughout all of the tributes that I read was just the heart that the guy had, and how he really cared about his friends, and B, just like the enthusiasm, like you said, like just his willingness to have fun and to love life, and kind of soak every drop of life out of it that he could at all times. And the world was better off without him, and now every movie set that doesn't have a guy like Doug on it will miss having him, because he was that much of a tribute. He wasn't just a fun guy; he was a really talented artist. And there's one last, let's say a couple last memories about Doug before we wrap this up, as we near that 1 hour mark. Um, And I remember this is such a little thing, but it's funny how when someone passes away, you remember a lot of these random little things. But I remember working with him on the collective, and we were sitting next to each other in a booth at like the restaurant or you know the common area in the hotel that we were staying at. We were just sitting in a booth next to each other because he was showing me a bunch of stuff on his computer, and he had a laptop and he had this really cool gadget. Doug was kind of a gadget guy, and you would love this thing, Mike, because you're a big laptop guy. But he had this thing that you could plug into your laptop, which was basically like it would picture like almost like an iPad that would fold out like this, like boom, like an accordion. And then there would be two screens, and you could attach that to your monitor. And now your laptop has three screens. And it was really lightweight. It was super.
I lost you, Tommy. I don't know if Tommy's audio went out for just a second, folks. But I'd say
I'm
once
back. I'm back.
again,
All right, I'm back, bud.
good.
So I remember, you know, his screens now, like his one laptop screen was now three laptop screens, and I was like, man, what a cool little gadget. And he just got so excited about that he was like, "Oh yeah, man, you got to see this thing. I got it online. It's only like a couple $100, and it's just like a fucking lifesaver. And I got so much more space to work." And he was so excited about it. And I remember just like, you know, people do this. I was like, "Oh, that's cool, man. I gotta get one of those." And then he like texted me like a week later the link to where he bought it, and he was like, "Hey, man, here's that screen extender that you like. Just thought you might be interested. I think they're on sale. Check it out." And it was just such a little thing where like and I didn't end up buying it. And you know, maybe I should buy it now to tribute our good friend Doug. But I remember just being like, "Man, what a good guy." Like he knew that I thought that was cool. He saw that it was on sale, and he a week or two later took the time to text me. Like most people don't do that shit. And I know it sounds like such a little thing, but like you're like, "Man, he's one of the real ones," you know?
Yeah, sometimes like some people would not even put those two things together. Like, oh, Tommy had an interest in this product and now it's on sale. Like a good portion of people, Tommy, wouldn't even those two little synapses or two little dots wouldn't even connect in their mind. And I think the bigger portion of people, Tommy, would be like, oh, yeah, I should let Tommy know about that. And then they wouldn't actually follow up. You know what I mean? Like that's probably 80% of the people. And maybe, we fall into that at times as well, because that happens. But Doug did take the extra step and follow up. And the truth is in the details
Thoughtfulness, Mike.
sometimes.
Thoughtful. It's just thoughtfulness, you know. He just had a great level of thoughtfulness. And the last thing I'll say to wrap this show up is, you know, it's kind of funny. I remember I just did a movie called Dirty, which will be coming out later in the summer. And I remember early on, it was one of those movies where, like, you know, the strike was in the way. So we thought it was going to start. And then the strike happened. And then there was a little bit of a fumble time where we were in limbo with the strike. And so basically, early on, before the strike, when the movie was going to happen, you know, sooner, I had Doug on the line to do the special effects on it. And I remember having that was the last time I talked to him. You know, I basically said, "Look, I got this project, and you know, the producer's looking for someone to potentially come to Mississippi and do special effects, and I would love to work with you because there's a lot of cool stuff in this, and it would just be awesome to see you again." And at the time, I hadn't seen him in probably a year or two. And I remember having like just that one call with him, and he was like, "Okay, bro, yeah, this sounds great. Let me know. You know, put me in touch with the producer." And then I think my producer on that one and him had like one initial call, and then of course the strike came and the movie ended up getting, you know, pushed for a while. And then by the time we did go to make it again, I'm pretty sure Doug was already on another show, and it just didn't work out. But there was that one more chance where I could have got a chance to work with Doug, and I didn't. And you know, I can't say that I'll regret it. I mean, you know, neither one of us could have predicted that a strike was about to happen. But I do wish that, you know, there's a part of me that if I could, if I could, you know, if I had a genie in a bottle, you know, one of those wishes would be like maybe just get one more movie with Doug. Um, that would have been a fun one because I know what he's capable of doing, and I know how violent he would have made it, and beautiful and just wonderful. And that's the kind of guy he was: violent, beautiful, and wonderful. And he's going to be missed. And we're going to, you know, everything we do moving forward is going to be kind of done with that artistic integrity in mind, that like, hey, let's step up and do kind of what Doug would do. Let's use all of our resources to make everything that we're doing the best it can be.
That's a great way of putting it, Tommy. And once again, just looking at some of the photos of Doug, there's a picture of him at what looks to be like either it looks like an arts and crafts festival of some kind, and Doug is actually wearing like, first of all, his shirt is like a black and white old school jail shirt, like an old school prisoner black and white striped shirt, or maybe it's supposed to be like a French mime shirt, and then he's got a it probably is a French mime because he's wearing like a little beret, like a Frenchman, and uh, he is breathing fire outdoors. He's
Sounds
just
like a Doug.
outside in the middle.
Sounds like a Doug thing to do.
He's just Ricky the Dragon Steamboat breathing fire. And
Hey,
it's
listen.
just
I think you would have, Mike. You would have really loved the guy. He was just so much fun. And listen, anybody who's stuck with us this long and taken the time to listen to the show, uh, I really suggest you go and just Google Doug Sakmann, Doug DougSakmann. Take a look at some of his videos. Take a look at some of his pictures. Look at some of the art that he's created. I guarantee you will smile because that's the kind of guy Doug was. He's an entertainer, man, and we're lucky to have him, and we'll miss him very much. And hey, we're back now. We're back here on And Action. We're going to be coming at you next week. I have another movie lined up in September, which will probably put me on the shelf for a few weeks. But between now and September, you can expect a healthy diet of weekly And Action filmmaking episodes. And Mike, it's good to see you again, brother. I missed your face.
yeah, man, and thanks, Tommy, and sorry to the audience, and especially to Doug, because I had as soon as we started the show, Tommy, as you know, Murphy's Law, the Wi-Fi really went out on me, which was horrible. But I'm glad you stuck through it, and I did want to mention one other thing on Doug, and like I said, you knew him a lot more than I did, but there's a trauma video titled All the Love You Cons, an Indies Guide to the Con Film Festival. Doug is actually on the cover of this with some of the other trauma people. And Doug has got like a megaphone, and they've written the words next to Doug's megaphone: give independent art back to the people. And I had to say that because I kind of feel like if Doug could speak through this podcast and give a message to everybody about where he stood with filmmaking and arts in general, give independent art back to the people. I think that would you say as his colleague that that's something that Doug would approve of?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think also just like create art at all times. And, like, why aren't you doing something? Like you said, I think he was winning awards when he was practically a kid. Doug, the reason why Doug was successful is because he put so much time in. And I think that, like I said, go check out his photos. You will be inspired. I think we can all be inspired by him. Mikey, that's about all the time we have today, brother. But it was so good to see you again. And thank you so much for all of our And Action watchers for watching along and joining us. And we're going to have a fun topic coming up next week. We're going to lighten up the mood a little bit. Lots going on, guys. We're going to get you up to speed. I think next week we're just going to do like a little catch up where Mikey and I just kind of catch up. We're going to call it Catching Up with Mikey and Tommy. We're going to talk about what the hell all we've been up to and what we got planned for the summer. So lots going on.
The Midsummer Breakdown.
Yes, I like that. Midsummer Breakdown. Sounds like a pay-per-view from 1986. All right, bye, guys. Thanks for watching.